Hi, I'm Painty. Here's a new interesting video for you about natural paints. After already explaining what sandarac resin is, which can be used to make a very durable protective varnish for our homemade paint that cannot be protected with water-based finishes, today I will talk to you about COPAL resin. With it, we will produce another protective varnish, also plant-based and ultra-resistant. If you missed the video about sandarac varnish, I'll leave the link up here on the right. At this point, you will ask me, what is the difference between sandarac resin and COPAL resin? At first glance, I can tell you no one. Both are plant-based resins extracted from trees, and they dissolve in alcohol at least 94 degrees. They are very resistant, and both are highly protective. So, is there a difference? Yes, there are small differences in the composition of the varnish, which I'll explain right away. The sandarac-based varnish is more satin-like, whereas the COPAL varnish is much glossier. Sandarac varnish is great for indoor use, while COPAL varnish is extremely durable even outdoors, being much more water-repellent than sandarac. Additionally, sandarac varnish requires a bit of benzoin to prevent it from turning powdery, whereas COPAL varnish is fine as it is. But now let's see how to make COPAL varnish. You will need a kitchen scale, isopropyl alcohol, a funnel, a spoon, a small jar with a lid, a laboratory jar, COPAL resin, and a small clean cloth to use as a filter. You can take an old one that you don't use anymore. To make about 110 ml of COPAL varnish, we start by pouring 100 grams of isopropyl alcohol into a small jar. But what is this isopropyl alcohol, and why don't we use regular ethyl alcohol or bioethanol, which would be more natural? Regular ethyl alcohol, as to say the one below 94 degrees, does not dissolve natural resins, and denatured alcohol leaves colored residues. Bioethanol, being transparent and at least 95 degrees, is still not suitable as it interferes with the synthetic acrylic resin we use and does not perform well in overly humid conditions. It could leave white streaks. So after various tests, I realized that it's better to use isopropyl alcohol. But be careful because they are not all the same. Some still contain a very small percentage of bioethanol, which can cause problems. So make sure to buy only 100% pure isopropanol. You won't find it on the websites I mentioned like Antiquita Belsito or amicucci.it. I bought it on Amazon. Next, we incorporate approximately 20 grams of COPAL resin, which is 20% of the alcohol quantity. As you can see, COPAL resin comes in flakes. So we need to let it sit for approximately 24 hours to give it time to dissolve. After 24 hours, we carefully transfer our resin into a laboratory jar. The laboratory jar has this double lid, which is especially useful for alcoholic solutions like ours to prevent the alcohol from evaporating. These jars can easily be found on antiquitabelsito.it or amicucci.it. To transfer it, we use a clean cotton cloth. I cut pieces from an old torn pillowcase that I no longer use. We place the funnel on the jar and the cloth over the funnel to filter the resin residues and then transfer the contents. As you can see here, And here's our final protective varnish ready to use. Always remember to label it with the product name and the production date. All the tools can be cleaned with simple ethyl alcohol, and once thoroughly cleaned, just rinse them under water as usual. Now I'll show you how to apply the COPAL resin-based protective coating. Usually one coat is enough because it is very protective. Remember, if you're in a closed environment, wear a mask if the alcohol bothers you, although it's best to apply the varnish outdoors. It's best to use a flat brush, applying long straight strokes without going over the same area, and importantly, working quickly because the alcohol dries fast. After that, you need to wait at least 24 hours for the resin to crystallize. The protection provided by COPAL resin is excellent for restyling projects that remain outdoors because, as I mentioned at the beginning, COPAL varnish is water-repellent and highly resistant to UV rays. In fact, I used it to protect a garden bench, but there's nothing stopping you from using it indoors as well. Just be careful because it remains very glossy, so if you don't want this effect, I recommend using sandarac resin instead. Have you already seen the video on how to make sandarac varnish? If you haven't seen it yet, click on the tutorial I've linked here on the side. Bye-bye, see you in the next video. And remember to leave me a like.